Okay, everybody, it is Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, and 3i Atlas has reached perihelion today, and which is its closest position to the sun, which is very exciting because yesterday I was listening to Avi Loeb on Joe Rogan, and of course, good thing about Joe Rogan is he gives his speakers a lot of time to present, so they don't have to be in a super hurry. And so Loeb believes, absolutely, I'm convinced he believes 3i Atlas is a mothership or it is some type of technology. He would like to use the word technology. I would say, understanding my model that I presented from um, the idea that we have proof from William Tiller's model, the Stanford scientist, who was somebody that I personally knew and got to work with a little bit and interviewed him for my films, that the Tiller model proves that consciousness, when it's coherent, is more powerful than gamma rays, is the most powerful energy source in the universe. It's just that we can't. I mean, if you see, shows like paranormal shows like Stranger Things, in the end, 11, the young female character is able to lift this huge container that actually looks like a spaceship, and it's quite symbolic. And the idea that um, from the data we have from the crash retrievals, that we don't see any form of visible propulsion and thrust. I've watched all the congressional UFO hearings on the matter of UAP UFOs, and there's no question we don't see evidence of an engine or a technology unless it's something ultra fine that we can't see. So there is at least, at the very least, an interface between the occupant's consciousness, bioelectric connection, as well as the possibility that these enormous craft are driven by highly coherent conscious beings. And in fact, Loeb is stating in this interview that today at perihelion, that if it is a mothership, and I think he believes it is. I don't think, based on the spectroscopy of from the James Webb, that it is made out of manufactured nickel mainly, and that nickel is highly magnetic in the sense that it can be turned into a permanent magnet. I think he's convinced it is a piece of technology. I don't think Loeb is aware of the studies of William Tiller on consciousness and the enormous power of consciousness. I don't think he understands that. And the beings that are super advanced in this cosmos can drive metallic structured craft by super consciousness. I know that's hard for, humans at this point to really get a grasp of, but I think that's what we're probably dealing with. And so he's looking today for evidence of this maneuver, looking back at the data of Oumuamua, our first of the three interstellar visitors, of a sudden acceleration going past the sun. And if that does not happen, if there is no sudden acceleration of Oumuamua in the next 2 to 3 days, then that tells you something really incredible, that it is far beyond Newtonian physics and Newtonian ideas about gravity and even propulsion. So I would be really cautious if he doesn't see this sudden acceleration using the sun's massive energy and gravity. But what I'm getting is that there is an energy exchange in its rendezvous with the planets. What happened with Mars, and again, it was on October 5th, which is only 3 days after Yom Kippur ended on the 2nd, when the big alignment which I previously presented occurred. I had this experience that I detailed where I was sleeping in my guest cabin and I woke up at about 4 in the morning to this bright light that had entered my cabin and was shining through the walls of the cabin. And I thought the sun had entered the room. And I had got up and I was on the balcony. It was a clear morning. It was about 4 in the morning. And then I went back to sleep and I left my body and I see this. It's like the size of our sun and it's transmitting visible light very clearly. And about, I mean, I don't want, it's a very different kind of light than the sun actually, because this light was very healing and soothing, but extremely bright. And I mentioned that I had a person in the state of Washington underneath me, and I'm going to present this to you right now, who woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and saw the same thing, but she saw it with her eyes. Now, what I've been able to gather is this woman has been teaching remote viewing for 25 years. So she's an accomplished meditator, a very conscious individual. And she got up and she saw it and she said, there's no way that's a planet. It's too big. It's like, the disk is like the size of the sun. It's definitely not the moon because there was no moon. Now, I've got data on this case that is so stunning. I'm going to show you right now. We've got a lot to share today. And so when we look at this case, watch this. This is mind-blowing stuff. Remember, this morning I got up at 1:39, and that's just code. I woke up at 1:39 and I meditated super early. And so this is my position here. I'm up in this area called Nelson, British Columbia. But I'm outside of the town of Nelson, in between this town of Balfour, where my youngest daughter was born, and she's down here in Omak, Washington, near Okanagan. And guess what? It is 139 miles between us. You can see on the Google Earth up here. So there's my harmonic. It's 139, which is, of course, for the people who have been following me, is the number of planet 139, which is the planet responsible for the miracle of the sun at Fatima, Portugal. The angle between us is stunning. This angle, which I measured with a protractor, is resurrection angle in the Great Pyramid. It's the angle of resurrection, which is a smidgen between 38 and 39 degrees. And with that, I can see, and I'm going to go over that angle in a minute on my angles project on Google Earth. I can see what is really going on here, because in these cycles of the upper nine planets of the angels, or the enlightened in other ancient wisdom teachings and religions, which are mainly physically invisible to us, they periodically become visible and interact with us during these very harmonic cycles in what we will call the harmony of the order, or the cosmic clock of the solar system. And so the angle that they appear at is as if there's an opening portal in the heavens above us, and there is an interaction with, just like at Fatima, Portugal, the whole planet did not experience the miracle of the sun. Only the people in that location experienced the miracle of the sun, which was an eclipse between our sun and planet 139. So because we have two witnesses in this case, and they're 139 miles apart, and their resurrection angle apart, is utterly worth noting as a remarkable incident. And so watch what happens when I go to my angles project. I just want to clarify this, because this is really getting amazing. So we go to Earth Google on my angles project. I just wanted people to understand how powerful this this 38 to 39 degree angle is. And remember, angle is as to angel and how the planets of the angels come in at angles of incidence. So we look at here we go, view all projects. And here's my angels angles project. So what 3i Atlas is doing is it's actually energetically, and it is probably an enormous cycle. It is energetically opening these portals. And there's going to be more of them. This is a big event. We're just at the very beginning of this and where this is going to go. And that's why doing the frequencies attunes us to what's going on. So we come back to my angles project in the Giza Plateau, the Giza Plateau, as it's pronounced in the Arabic. We can see that I'll just call it the 39 degree angle, even though it's a shaving between 38 and 39. We can see what happened is, and I showed this last week. Last week I showed the 26 degree angle, because 26 degrees to the east is the rising position of the Star of Bethlehem, and I'm saying the Star of Bethlehem is actually planet 139. And we can see that the 26 degree angle, which is the interior angle of ascension in the Great Pyramid of Egypt, ascending up to the King and Queen's chambers on the inside. It's also the angle of the descending passage in the Great Pyramid of Egypt, which is a highly, highly complex lecture that I could give. And that angle to the east, where Jesus was born, also where he was baptized, 26 degrees, is the rising position of the Star of Bethlehem, which is planet 139. And the setting position ran right through Fatima, Portugal, where the miracle of the sun happened at 26 degrees to the west. But now the angle of resurrection, which is this blue line here, runs to the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus appeared in his resurrected body 3 times, where the temple of Mary Magdalene's family, the Migdal Temple, was found very recently. It's one of the newest discoveries in archaeology, further proving that Mary Magdalene was not the former prostitute, which was confirmed by the Pope in 1968 in reversing their decision because they knew they'd made a grave error, and that this family was very wealthy and they ran the fishing vessels, and they also built a Holy of Holies and temple complex at Resurrection Angle front to the Great Pyramid. But also on Resurrection Angle, the church at Zaytun, which is this red balloon down here, on the same angle, is where the Mother Mary appeared in her resurrected body of light, and millions of people saw her in 1968. She was photographed. I've gone over this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But again, this shows 2 examples of 2 persons who appeared at resurrection angle. And the resurrection angle to the west, the setting position goes all the way around the planet and connects to the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico, and the site where Juan Diego had visions of the resurrected Mother Mary, and she imprinted her image on the tilma, the cactus fiber cloth, in the 16th century. So those examples of resurrection angle interest me in this case, because in my case of seeing this glowing planet, and I actually, if I point the direction of where I saw it, it is between myself and my second witness in the state of Washington, and we are 39 degrees from each other. So it shows you consistently, when you get consistent data, it's showing you it's a repeatable, reliable model. It's not random. So this angle actually would have stretched all the way across the planet. And on the lower end of this angle, actually, it runs right through the Hawaiian Islands. I was on Google Earth with this woman. I think her mind was completely blown when she saw this. So I was looking from this area of Nelson, British Columbia towards Omak, Washington, and she was looking in my direction when she saw it. So we both confirm I'm looking in her direction, she's looking in my direction, and it's way, way up there. And it's shining with light, and it's a disk of light, and it is planetary in size. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. But now that would have been a portal that would have opened around the time of Yom Kippur. And so that alignment at Mars was very powerful. What's about to happen now is we're coming to the position of Venus. And so we need to get ready for that. And that means if you go in the queue, we're going to be doing Earth to Venus frequencies starting tonight as soon as you can, because the pairing of Venus is upon us. So today's perihelion, so it's the closest position to the sun. This is the moment that Loeb is talking about that. In fact, he said something really interesting in the Joe Rogan interview. I mean, I really recommend watching it. I'll send you links to where that is, where the Joe Rogan he has it linked up in his most recent article on his blog, and I'm going to be going there today. So this is today, the 29th of October, and you can see that Comet Lemon, the Sun, and Atlas are fairly well aligned. They were perfectly aligned on the actually the 26th. So if I go back to 26th, you see that? You see Comet Swan, Lemon, the Sun, and Atlas are all in a straight line. I mean, this is such organization. That means all of these comets are at play. And at play, I would say all of them are driven by the power of extremely advanced conscious beings, because this does not look like a random play field here. This looks incredibly organized. And then we can see Atlas, Venus, and K1 Atlas are also in alignment here in a straight line. So we have this kind of geometry happening, and we're approaching Venus here. You're going to see what happens on the third and fourth. See, when you come to the pairing of Venus on November the 3rd, there it is. It's paired with Venus. This is a high harmonic to be working with the Earth to Venus frequencies. It is clearly doing its own, it's fulfilling its own mission, 3i Atlas, but we don't know the physical effects of that mission and what it's going to do. The physical effects, like if Loeb is right and it's releasing what he calls mini probes, would not be things the size of a satellite. When he says mini, he's saying that in comparison to the size of 3i Atlas, which is at least the size of the island of Manhattan, according to him, although the hypergeometry extending beyond it are much bigger than that. And the evidence now that I presented last week that the NASA LASCO C3 camera caught hyperdimensional 591 on the camera, and that it was not 3i Atlas which showed up on the camera, because 3i Atlas is to a camera at that distance is much smaller and actually only appeared as a speck. I'm going to be going over that a little bit more today too, because I have new data on that. So the portal opened for 591. It showed up on the camera. Now, I'm spending time all week with a professor of physics in the Atlantic East Coast of the United States, because he's really trying to understand the object that appeared on the LASCO camera, NASA solar camera, and that we are still blocked from the Mars HiRISE camera images of 3i Atlas, probably even more stunning because if the same object appeared on the LASCO cameras, appeared on the Mars HiRISE cameras, you have a serious problem. That means 591 appeared on the HiRISE camera. And the problem isn't 3i Atlas, it's 591 because it's enormous in its size. I have new incredible data on that. So, but now we're going into our next portal, which is Venus. And then at Christmas, the big one for us is the Earth alignment for 3i Atlas. So whatever it's doing, if it's sending out what he calls mini probes, which would be sizable craft, I would say it could take up to 3 years before we see. When I say up to 3 years, I mean it could happen. It depends on how quickly they want to interact with us. Now, he actually says this in the Joe Rogan interview. He actually talks about how would we know if it sent out mini probes. I mean, that was a question on Joe Rogan. Well, he said, well, sometime thereafter we would start seeing little goddesses. I think he said a word like that, visiting us. And of course, Loeb has already received millions of dollars in grants to set up this advanced UFO. It's called Project Galileo detection network that will detect everything that moves out there, everything that moves out there. And so we will know if we're being visited. Will they tell us? Probably not, because even though we've had these UAP UFO congressional hearings that are demanding complete disclosure to the American public and the world, you're probably not going to get that unless it happens to you. So what happened to me and my neighbor south of me is something that personally happened to both of us. And the fact that it happened to both of us, and we've known each other intermittently for years, and this woman has been in my house in Sedona, Arizona after my daughter Aware was born. I mean, I can say I know her and I've seen her, and she was with a famous scientist named Ralph Ring. I could say that, she's reliable, and we're both enormously stunned. So this window with Venus means doing the frequencies Earth to Venus right now is going to be very powerful. And of course, just after Venus, will on the 11th of November, which is November 11th, 11/11, 3i Atlas will pair again with the orbit of 591. But we don't have any photography capacity close to it. But at this point, amateur astronomer telescopes will have full access as 3i Atlas comes to the right of the sun, right? Like right now, it's still pretty much behind and above the sun from Earth, but on November 11th, it's going to be full view. So if 591 is still visible, remember, with the miracle of the sun at Fatima, there are two dates. There is May the 13th is the first appearance of the apparition, and when the three children described the Mother Mary appearing to them, the sun dimmed, which means something planetary appeared in front of the sun, which was kind of like the first level of a mini eclipse. And then the big eclipse with 139 occurred 5 months later on October 13th, 1917. So I don't know if 591 is going to be visible, but what we do know is it appeared on the LASCO cameras. So before I go to Avi Loeb and today's news, I want to show you what's going on there, because if I go to my Medium blog, I've really updated this article, and I'm really trying to educate this physicist who teaches physics at a major American university. I mean, they want to know because actually, you know what I should do? Here, let me show you this first, and then I'm going to show you this new paper that came out by Beatrice Villarreal on exactly what we're talking about: suddenly appearing and vanishing stars or planets, question mark. So here it is. I've updated the article. 3i Atlas is proven here. I have said now, in fact, to understand that we live in a hyperdimensional solar system with hyperdimensional visits by UAP, UFOs, and vanishing and appearing stars is a prerequisite for this evidence. In fact, here's a set of images of such appearing and vanishing stars from the Astronomical Journal. And if we click on this image here, and there's a new paper that's going to go really deep into this that Beatrice Villarreal, who is also on Medium, who is a young physicist from Sweden. You see how this object appears, and this is the Palomar telescope on black and white photographic plates. I'm a darkroom expert with 20 years experience as a professional photographer in the old days developing film. And you notice that our bright object is here, and then in a period of time later, it's gone. This is exactly what I'm talking about, and it's really amazing. I mean, on my Medium page, which is growing really fast because I'm getting thousands of reads on my articles, which is good. I get these young, arrogant, people who think this is just all crazy and it's not science. Well, this is in the Astronomical Journal, people. Okay, I don't know why this isn't the biggest story in the world. The Vanishing and Appearing Stars project should be one of the biggest stories on Earth, along with 3i Atlas and the new report from Congress that we've identified 3 under ocean bases that these UAPs operate in and out of. I don't know why this isn't the biggest story in the world. I just think people are so sleepy. Their heads are all over the place in their computers devices. So I don't know why they don't know this. But if astronomers are seeing whole planet to star size, I don't like the word object. They use the word object. How can you call a planet an object? It's a planet. Get over it. Yes, they jump in and they jump out of our dimension. And this is how we're going to prove what happened at Fatima in Portugal in 1917. Okay, so we just have to get over it and get on with it and realize we live in a hyperdimensional solar system. So this this comparative I showed last week, where our mystery object up here appears and then disappears and then reappears. And this amateur astronomer here actually captured 3i Atlas, which is a speck, and the yellow line is its transit and the dates, like this is the 21st, this is the 20th. And of course, this image on the left was the 20th of October, but the object on this is not where 3i Atlas is, it's a little bit behind it, which means exactly as I predicted on the 19th, 20th, that 3i Atlas was going to come within the orbit of planet 591, which means this has to be 591. Okay, so and these images from the European Space Agency show glints of huge geometries, and that measuring the arc seconds in the sky for these images based on the optics of the camera, this object is way too big to be 3i Atlas. It's planetary in size, and it's a glint. And I'm going to go over glints in a minute too, because Beatrice Villarreal has really helped me with a new graphic showing what glints mean. So what I did this week, but what I added to the article was, here's our object that appears, and our time code was 842, and then at 9:18, which is only roughly a half an hour later, it's gone. Now, That's exactly what Beatrice Villarreal has documented in the Vanishing Stars project is it can be gone 15 minutes later. Yes, it can. Holy cow. I mean, if this isn't more exciting than Star Trek, I don't know what is. Because if a whole planet can appear and disappear in her data, and I'm getting it on the LASCO in perfect timing, and here it is appearing again. You see, the upper image is 906 because the time code is at the bottom, and there it is again. And so the image shows two exposures in the sequence from the source, one with the object in question, and one is not there. So I don't think NASA's editing out the images. I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think they've touched them. I think what's happening is this 591 here is of course they're going to try and call it an artifact of the camera. You should see what Beatrice Villarreal has to deal with right now with the whole idea of defects of the glass plate negatives because they just when you can't accept that something is happening, you have to come up with a rational, logical explanation that it can't be happening. And so you rationalize it in your head. And that's what I'm going through with this physicist from the East Coast right now with these specific images. Is no, this is not a star cluster. The Pleiades weren't there. No, he thinks it's something that got near the camera. And what I know about this camera and the exposures being 20 seconds long, anything that streaks is getting closer and closer to the camera. In fact, even these stars in the background are, if you blow them up, they are slightly streaked. So here we have the object appearing twice in a row in two frames, and that's 854 and that's 906, right? So that means that we have an object that it's blinking in and blinking out. And again, they're going to go to artifact of the camera. Of course they are, because they can't accept it. But what I'm going to do now, having a lot of problems with my mouse, I'm going to go to the new paper. And this is it. Let me see. This this is something I wanted to show you. Actually, before, let me go to the new paper, and then I'm going to show you this very exciting news. Here we go. Here's the new paper. This paper was just published a few days ago by Beatrice Villarreal. It's peer reviewed. And believe me, I have way more experience with negatives than these people do. I actually can't believe she doesn't have somebody as experienced as I am with developing old film the old-fashioned way. Probably because there's not as many people as old as me left who are available. So this is the paper, aligned multiple transient events in the first Palomar sky survey. And you can see that the head researcher, Beatrice Villarreal, and you got all these other physicists, that are peer reviewing the work. The abstract is, again, that objects, uh, she started with the word vanishing stars, and it's either star or planet, and she's correct. She rules out in this paper why they can't be they can't be things like even UFOs, because why the exposures on these glass plates are 40-minute. That means the lens is open for 40 minutes. And that means they're tracking the heavens, but if something is moving like a UAP, UFO, it's going to streak. And the light intensity based on the ASA of the film, which is the light sensitivity of the film, which is subject she didn't go over in this paper. I read this whole paper really slowly. But I want to show you what glints are. and there's a lot of photographs coming up, if I could get my mouse to work, that show these objects appearing and vanishing. I really don't like the word object because object denotes something very small, and um, I don't think you're looking at small at all. Okay, here we go. So here we go. Here's a case right here of the left. They're there. And on the right, you see this little blue circle here? Let me just blow that up, make it bigger. There we go. See this blue circle here? And the next plate on the right, it's gone. It's gone. And then it's red what she circled as a probable defect on the film plane, and that's just not true. Glass plates are more pure than acetate films. They don't have defects. But I think to satisfy some of her peers, she's just going to call some of them defects. This isn't what a defect looks like. A defect is going to be a scratch, so it'll appear as a streak. And the way these negatives glass plates are handled is with such precision and care. People aren't like, throwing them on the beach in the sand and scratching them. And they're not even that easy to scratch, actually. Right? So she's got these pink ones as defects, and see, pink circles show defects. These are not what defects look like. I've developed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rolls of film with different types of negative developers and different ASA films. And no, they don't do that. But anyway, she's just satisfying them because in a way, they found too many of these cases over the years. And you see the year here, 1954, 1955, 1952. Arc minutes of view is 10 by 10. So the moon is 30 arc minutes approximately in diameter. So that would be 1/3 of the diameter of the moon. So the telescope is looking at 1/3 of the diameter of the moon squared in the enormous vastness of space. And then she started arguing away things like reflections off of objects floating in the atmosphere. Of course, in the 1950s, when these images were taken, there were no satellites. We didn't have any satellites. It was pre-Sputnik. Sputnik was only one satellite. The odds of you running into Sputnik up there even later when Sputnik went up are almost nothing. So the blue circles, she's confirmed, are not defects. And on the right, they're gone. They disappeared. You see the black dots? This is the negative, which means those are bright. They're gone. They're gone. I mean, this should be the most exciting story. So remember, the reason I'm bringing this up is because in the case of 3I Atlas, we are going to see that we are seeing this because on the NASA LASCO C3 camera, we've got my enormous object, which is planetary in size. Again, it's hard to know how big it is until you know how far away it is from the camera, but I can determine that based on the amount of blurring or streaking. When I blow up my massive object, I can tell you prospectively how far it is away. There's no real streaking on these stars, and that's because the distant stars are what you call the fixed stars. The planets are called your wanderers because they're wandering faster than the stars are. So telescopes, when they do long exposures, track the movement of the star, which is the movement of the Earth. And so she's calling this blob of light here a defect, and it disappears here in the pink. That is not a defect. It doesn't look anything like a chemical stain. Again, with glass plates, they're the most pure. Again, she's satisfying her peers, but these blue circle objects disappear on the right. So there's no geometry in these if they were glints. And glints based on the reason you have a 40-minute exposure is because the film speed is so fine and the light levels are so low on these distant stars, you have to leave the lens open for a long time to expose the film point. So anything glinting would not expose the film plane unless it had intense light in the X-ray or gamma ray bands. She didn't bring up X-rays or gamma ray bursts, which she should have, even though they're quite rare in astronomy. You don't see a lot of gamma ray bursts on a daily basis in space. They're enormously powerful. So again, on the left, all of these, I'll call them planets, until confirmed otherwise. If a whole star can vanish, that's even more disturbing than a whole planet vanishing. So I want to get to the glints. So I'm trying to, I'm probably going to have to go here on the left. So that she's now reversed them into their positive. So these are positive films. But let me go to her graphic of the glints. So we got lots of cases. I mean, this peer-reviewed paper should be the most disturbing thing to the scientific community. I'm actually surprised Avi Loeb himself isn't talking about this yet, but he will be. Okay, here's what this is what I need. Okay, so to explain the images from the European Space Agency of what they think is 3I Atlas, which is probably 591, this is an example of glints. So if you have a multi-geometric object and it's rotating and reflected light glints off of one of its surfaces, the camera is only going to see mostly the glint, the bright area, and it's going to have very low detail in the rest of the geometry. And I thought this is an excellent description, which inadvertently helps solve the problem of understanding what we're looking at on the Mars ESA imagery, which showed incredible glints of geometry. So with that, this paper is so worth reading because it's probably the biggest breakthrough in the world of astronomy that there really is. So I'm going to go now to this. This is really incredible. I love how angry this newscaster at Newsmax gets here. So I'm going to share this here, share sound on this guy. And so
joining us now for more, Harvard professor and
Can you hear that audio? I just need to make sure you can hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. Watch how mad this guy gets.
Astrophysicist Dr. Avi Loeb, great to have you back tonight. So 2 weeks, Dr. Loeb, after taking pictures of this thing, NASA is still refusing to make those photos public. They're blaming it on the shutdown. What is NASA hiding? Are they hiding something?
Thanks for having me. Well, I'm still of the belief that if they are slow, it's not because of extraterrestrial intelligence, but because of terrestrial stupidity. And so we should just wait, in my opinion. Indeed, the NASA image from the high-rise camera on top of the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter should give us a pixel resolution of 30 kilometers, 3 times better than the previous best image from the Hubble telescope. So we should just wait for that. And the object would actually reach closest approach to the sun in just a week on October 29th.
Right.
That's around the time of Halloween. And we shall see if it wears any customs, if it changes the direction, maneuvers. That would be the optimal time to do so. We can't observe it from Earth. because it's hiding behind the sun, perhaps for a purpose. It could also release some mini probes that would approach the planets. And I asked my Galileo research team to look for any unusual activity in the coming months.
Okay,
And
let me stop you just because now
yeah.
I've got multiple questions. I'm sorry to cut you off, but okay. So have you reached out to NASA? Because this is just, look, I operate in the real world, and NASA's supposed to release photos within 24 hours. It's been 15 days. They're blaming it on the shutdown. You're buying that? If there's nothing to hide, then have Jerry at NASA release the photos. It's that simple, right?
Yes, it's actually not NASA. The principal investigator of this camera is at the University of Arizona, and I actually sent an email asking him for the data. He didn't reply. So
wow.
I'm not sure exactly what is going on, but I'm not willing to speculate. And I
See, he's just being really polite. So he's saying that he contacted the principal investigator, and that's the Mars high-rise camera. And he doesn't even return his email or his messages. So obviously there's a blackout for a reason. And I believe the reason is I'm the one who caught it on the LASCO camera, and I've been sharing those images with my professor friend and trying to educate him about how cameras work. And when you have long exposures, if you're not tracking something and it's getting closer to the optical view of the camera, it will streak. And Villarreal also goes through that in her paper, and she notes that there's no streaking on her objects. So it means they're not wandering, they are fixed, as in the fixed stars. And if you're tracking the fixed stars, which are the distant stars and not the planets, then they won't streak even over 40-minute exposure, unless you want them to streak. But they don't streak, so they appear as point sources, which means they're very far away, which means they're very large, incredibly large. So I think I caught what NASA doesn't want us to see, and that's in my Medium article of it's not 3i Atlas, it's this other enormous planetary size object, which is 591. And that was the real purpose of 3i Atlas, to hit its bullseye and say, look here. Or 3i Atlas opened the portal, just like the experience I had with my neighbor south of me here, and what we witnessed is something you could liken to the miracle of the sun at Fatima. Absolutely. Because in my experience, it was the planet of what I call the angels, or the enlightened beings who live on these hyperdimensional planets. And the way in physics you can explain it is that in our dimension, actually, I always like to show graphics of what I'm talking about, so I can show what's called TGF lightning, terrestrial gamma ray flashes of lightning. Here we go. So our Earth is being bombarded by lightning strikes all day long, which theoretically drive the Tesla-Schumann resonances. The Tesla-Schumann resonance is not the frequency of Earth. It is a frequency response to the lightning strikes. But these terrestrial gamma ray flashes are super lightning strikes that cause gamma rays to then trigger the appearance of antimatter, which then annihilates instantaneously, releasing gamma rays, which is where these TGFs, terrestrial gamma ray flashes, operate at. So the Earth has a tiny, tiny bit of antimatter appearing and annihilating constantly, which means in the hyperdimensional solar system, they can't theoretically could be made out of antimatter, and this theory is proven by physicists at the large particle accelerators, and they maintain a tiny bit of matter. which basically that tiny bit of matter, which is equal to our side of the dimensional membrane in the solar system, is in I won't call it an equilibrium, but I'll call it in differential to their side. So they have a tiny bit of matter. They're made out of antimatter. We're made out of matter. We have a tiny bit of antimatter. And that tiny bit of differential can can suddenly appear in our dimension for a duration of time, but it couldn't stay here all the time, or it would wreak havoc on the solar system. Now, that's if our hyperdimensional planets are made of antimatter. There may be a form of stable antimatter that we don't understand in physics yet. I mean, again, we don't understand everything yet. One thing I know about working and being around Nobel Prize winning physicists for years when I was, in the Association of Advanced Physics Corporation and working for Maglich on nuclear fusion and advanced detection systems, is that physics is in a constant state of stasis, and it's constantly changing. And it's a constant argument. In fact, there are no absolutes in the world of physics. So when young students come and see my presentations or my articles on Medium, which seem to be causing quite a bit of a storm, getting thousands of reads, they're saying some of them are really open-minded and they say, wow, and others just say, oh, this is all nonsense. But when you're going to try to say something is nonsense at this point, when you have the Vanishing Stars project and you have peer-reviewed papers about appearing and vanishing objects that could be none other than planets or stars or very large objects, you have a problem for those old thinkers who are still stuck in the old standard model. And in fact, one thing in Beatrice's new paper really stunned me is, and she's very subtle at this in her paper, is the objects in question could be inside the solar system. And she thinks they must be inside the solar system. And if you have a sudden appearing and vanishings inside the solar system, then we live in a very exciting solar system yet to be discovered, because we are only aware of the obvious observables. But now we have, again, she's labeled them transients in her new paper. Transients, observables, meaning they're transient. They appear and they disappear. So like fish under the water, somebody throws a pebble, where did it come from? To the fish, he doesn't know, because the fish can't see above the water. So with that, I think the door is opening. The door is opening and the data is there. It gets buried because your classically trained scientists are not ready to accept it yet. That's why my scientist at the Eastern University is having a hard time with this, because they want to go to, it must be artifact of the camera. It must be that something got, near the lens. And no, space is a very clean environment. I've had so many arguments with Joseph Newth III, who's the head of the astrochemistry branch at NASA. I spent over the course of a year, I've got tons of letters from him about subjects like this, where they're dealing with unknowns out there that the cameras pick up. And who knows how many times our cameras in space have picked things up we don't like and they get edited out. So what I'm excited about now is when 3i Atlas comes to the right of the sun and pairs with Venus November 3rd, it's the beginning of when the amateur astronomers are going to get their eyes on it. And that is super exciting. So remember, this week we are switching to Venus frequencies, which are in the Google Drive. So with that, I'm excited what's coming next. I have a lot more I didn't present yet today. There's just too much sitting on what I have here in my research. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.